Greetings, my friends. We're back with another response. This time it's an older video, 8 years old to be specific, but one that I think still needs to be addressed due to the mentality of the video still being prevalent. Said video being titled, Why Superman is the Worst Superhero of All Time by Mann of 1000 Thoughts. A bold statement to say the least. However, because this video is old, I'll try and use references that came out before the video was published to keep things fair. So, let's get this over with.
Superman is the most well-known superhero of all time. He's considered the strongest superhero by many. He's gone up against many adversaries such as Doomsday, Darkseid, Brainiac, and obviously Lex Luthor. He's even gone up against other superheroes such as Batman. He's grown decades worth of fans, and some have gone as far as to call him the greatest superhero of all time.
Keep those villains' names in mind. I am not done with them yet.
I'm here to argue that is not the case. In fact, I'm going to show why Superman is the worst superhero of all time.
To say that is a bold claim is the understatement of the century. Superheroes as we know them have been around for almost 90 years. Even older if you want to include characters like Zorro or the Shadow. In order to make this claim, you would have had to have read every single story that DC, Marvel, Image, Charleston, and Dark Horse, just to name a few off the top of my head, have published. And I don't think there's enough time in the world for a person to actually do that. The reason why I'm getting so autistic about this is because he says this with no hint of hyperbole or exaggeration. Mr. 1000 Thoughts goes over the history of Superman. And by history, I mean the most basic overview you could ever give. More specifically, there's a large emphasis on his powers.
In 1938, when he first debuted in Action Comics, he was a very simplistic superhero. His main things were he could fly, or what they call leap over tall buildings in a single bound, run faster than a locomotive, had heat vision, and of course super strength as we all know.
One of his set abilities that he got wrong. They called it leaping tall buildings in a single bound because Superman actually couldn't fly when he was created. It wasn't until 1940 in the Superman radio program that he had the ability to fly. Then he goes into the Silver Age insanity of Superman's powers, which, yeah, fair enough, before saying this about Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Now, the thing is, as the years went on, they realized, yes, he cannot have any of these crazy powers. He really is too overpowered. And they fixed that later on. They fixed these problems in the issues Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985 to 1986, where they completely changed things that were wrong with Superman. He was more simplistic and he couldn't just keep making up superpowers on the spot. And from there it felt like, okay, he's fine, there's nothing truly wrong with him.
Maybe that was one of the smaller goals of Crisis, but the main goal was to always streamline the DC universe. Basically rebooting it into one cohesive timeline. Ironic, I know. The way that Mr. 1000 Thoughts makes it sound is that Crisis was specifically written to tone down Superman's abilities rather than be a consequence of it. Either that or he's just poorly communicating this point, which is probably the case. Regardless, it's a problem either way
with him. But the thing is, even then he still started gaining more and more superpowers that were just overpowered. Like, he still had the ability to gain power from the sun.
My guy, the super flare is right there if you want to complain about new powers. You'd still be wrong because the super flare was releasing all of his stored up solar energy, kind of like an extension of his heat vision, but it's more of a last resort move since it drains him pretty badly. But at least it's a newer ability that he had in the New 52.
And that's an unlimited source of energy. And as we know, you're not going to get rid of the sun.
It's true that the sun is an unlimited source of energy, but it's not too out of place in DC for certain heroes to have essentially an unlimited source of power. Barry Allen, for example, draws upon the Speed Force, which is a much stronger source, being an omnipresent and infinite source of energy within the multiverse. Plus, Clark's solar energy can be drained faster than it recharges if he fights a strong enough opponent, most famous of which being Doomsday. As for not being able to get rid of the sun, my guy, this is DC. Superboy Prime broke reality by punching it really hard. Getting rid of Earth's sun shouldn't be that hard if someone really wanted to do it.
So, because he always has that unlimited source of power, you truly can never defeat him. Unless, like I said, you get rid of the sun.
Except the time where he's been beaten or at least matched. Hell, season 1 of Justice League had Superman getting knocked out of fights constantly. Metallo almost killed Superman as well. And if you're wondering why I'm using sources from different continuities, it's because 1000 Thoughts Man is going to do the same thing. Oh, and Star Eaters exist, so you can get rid of the sun if you really wanted to as a writer.
Now, there are sort of ways you probably could combat this if you had a superhero who can basically engulf Superman in like a bubble that is completely dark and he never can get out. And it also blocks out the outside world, including the sun.
Pretty sure someone like Dr. Fate or Zatanna could do something like that, since they can basically do whatever they want.
Another problem with Superman being weak to magic is he's already so very fast, he could just go after the conjurer of the magic and take them down before they can weave their spells.
We know fast magic users in DC exist. Look at Captain Marvel and Dr. Fate, for example. As for magical antagonist, Black Adam and Trigon also exist. Also, no, I don't care if he's called Shazam now. He was Captain Marvel first, and I will respect that fact. We are about a quarter of the way through the video, and we are still only on Superman's powers. Not one comment about his actual character and how it's represented. A pattern that will unfortunately continue.
So basically, there's no real problem with magic anymore. He's too fast for the magician.
Here's Captain Marvel knocking around Superman. Here it is happening again. It's more than possible.
Now let's get into more of the meat and potatoes of why Superman just doesn't work as a good superhero. His strength. He is known as the strongest superhero in all of the known universe. And he's proven that time and time again, lifting objects that easily would crush anyone. But the thing is, because he's this strong, that means no one really compares to him.
Captain Marvel punched a black hole into existence. Diana helped Clark lift the Spectre. Clark's absurd feats fit within the absurd universe he lives in. Stop pretending otherwise. Also, amazing citation. The story that's about Superman effectively dying is what you use. And that scene was after he was overcharged on solar radiation, which is what is causing him to die. Which is literally stated right here in the panel you have shown. Well, more specifically, he's not really dying, more or less turning into a being of pure energy, which is supposed to represent the spirit leaving the body after its physical death. Regardless, the scene is out of context. Not only that, All-Star Superman is not canon to the main DC continuity, so we have absolutely no standard for what references we want to use. Everything is fair game.
There's no one that's as strong. Doomsday is known as the guy who can kill him. But the thing is, he hasn't exactly succeeded. In Superman Doomsday, him and Superman fight, and of course, Superman does the ultimate sacrifice to kill Doomsday. And everyone believes Superman is officially dead. And it's sad, it is. But the thing is, by the end of it, you come to find out Superman didn't actually die. He was actually just beaten within an inch of his life.
Indeed, it was an absolute fucking cop-out. Superman should have stayed dead for a good while. Let it have some impact, but unfortunately comics have to comic. He then plays clips from one of the Superbots in Superman Doomsday explaining how Superman didn't die. Basically, Kryptonian biology, once exposed to the yellow sun, operates differently in response to death. But he specifies the laws of human death.
It would seem that on this world, the laws of human death do not apply to you, Kal-El.
An important distinction that Man of 1,000 Thoughts completely ignores. It's not saying that Superman can't die, period. It's saying that he can't die like how humans die. Weird, I know, but nowhere is it implied or stated that he just can't die, period.
that doesn't work. That means he basically couldn't even die from his own attack. An attack he used that was meant to basically sacrifice himself. Even he could survive it.
What attack? What are you talking about? Are you saying Superman can't damage himself because he can? Burning off your own hair is damaging yourself, technically.
That really doesn't work. That means someone who's just about as strong as he is wouldn't be able to kill him.
Here is Superboy Prime killing Golden Age Superman. Try again.
And also, because he's this strong, you also kind of remove any sense of relatability.
In Superman vs. the Elite, Clark visits his parents after he begins to doubt his own principles, that maybe the world has moved on from him.
Come on, it's not that simple. I don't think that I make them feel safe anymore.
Do you think the world has moved on? To a place where I can't follow?
After all, everyone seems to be on board with how the Elite does things. And when such an overwhelming amount of people rally behind an ideal that, on paper, fits the modern world better than the old school truth, justice, and the American way, it can cause us to doubt ourselves and what we stand for. And if that happens, we look for advice from people close to us. That's something at least a good portion of us can relate to.
Because now, no one can ever aspire to be that strong that you can never even kill yourself even.
Did I just hear someone say Superman is unrelatable because he can't self-terminate? Oh my god, that's hilarious. But aside from that dumbass statement, we don't aspire to be as strong as Superman. We aspire to be as good and kind as Superman. This is one of the core tenets of Clark's character. He uses the persona of Superman to not only help people, but inspire us to be better, to be kinder, to be more compassionate. The fact that you seem unable to understand this is both hilarious and sad, because this is Superman 101. He's a symbol of hope and represents the best aspects of humanity.
We know that's not possible. We know we can't do that. Everyone's got to be able to hurt themselves in some way, shape, or form. And because Superman basically can do all this and almost sacrifice himself, but still not kill himself, it loses relatability now.
It's still so funny. Superman can't unalive himself, so he's unrelatable. Jesus Christ.
Let's get into more of his other powers, like his heat vision. That is something we thought was a simplistic thing. You know, having laser beams come from your eyes and burn you. It's like, okay, that's fine. Here's the thing. Even his heat vision is overpowered. The thing about his heat vision is, we thought simply he just has heat vision. It can melt stuff, it can burn people, and that's it. Well, here's the thing. He can actually expand it, making it even bigger than what it normally is. And that sounds okay, but then you realize that it actually can go as far as what he can see. So basically, if he flies out into space and looks at the Earth from afar and shoots his laser vision, it's gonna be the size of the Earth. His laser vision will be just as big as the Earth and destroy the entire planet. That's too much. That is way too much. To be able for someone to just destroy the planet by just looking at it, basically.
That's part of the point of Superman as a character. He has the power to break the world, but decides to help people. Always holding back. World made of cardboard and all, you know? And like I said earlier, Superman's absurd feats fit within the absurd world he lives in. It's not like he's the only one who could destroy the world if he wanted to. So the conversation becomes less about Superman being overpowered and more about DC needing to tone it down a bit.
And then another thing is, he can shrink his laser vision down to microscopic size and even perform lobotomies on people.
He then plays a clip from Superman vs. the Elite where Clark cuts out the anomaly from Manchester Black's brain. This only happens in the movie. In the comic, Clark gives Black a mild concussion that temporarily shuts off his powers. This isn't a lobotomy either. Now, Clark can give people lobotomies with his heat vision. Justice Lord Superman is right over there. However, the most important thing here is that you've removed the entire point of this scene and as such, removed the context. This is what happens when Superman stops holding back, stops using his powers responsibly, and starts resorting to lethal force as the only solution. That the quick and easy answer can create a much bigger issue. Like a Superman who sees no point in holding back, one that abandons that responsibility. I know your brain has shonen rot, but you need to understand the character and his stories before criticizing them. Reducing the scene to lol Blue Man OP is retarded and shows me you've never bothered to engage with it. Granted, we already knew that from the rest of this video, but I digress. We still haven't even talked about Superman as a character, by the way. We're still prattling on about his powers and still not engaging with all aspects of the character, which is at the same time boring and frustrating.
That's even more crazy because the way he does it, you don't even see it happen. He can do it with you just looking at him, and you won't know that you just got lobotomized until it's too late, basically.
Well, it's a good thing Clark wouldn't actually do this. Again, part of the point of his character you're refusing to engage with. World made of cardboard, etc. Also, I'm pretty sure someone like Reverse Flash would see it coming, so...
That as well is just too much. Because he has these abilities, he's basically unstoppable.
Except the times he has, regardless of the fact that he came back, Doomsday effectively stopped Superman, even if it was only for a bit. Golden Age Superman was beaten to death, like I said earlier. Justice Lord Superman was beaten. Lex Luthor killed Superman in DC Universe Online. Christopher Reeve's Superman needed help or he would have drowned. Is your Google foo so pathetic that you couldn't type in times Superman was beaten?
He can blow up an entire planet if he feels like it. He can lobotomize any human being or being in general if he feels like it, and there's nothing you really can do about it.
And we are once again not engaging with Clark's character. Those with great power have the responsibility to use it to benefit others and must be held to a higher standard. Superman inspires hope. He makes us want to be better, and he does that by showing restraint, by holding back, because he cares about the lives of the people he protects. So, he holds himself to that high standard.
Now, some of you might be thinking, well, what about kryptonite? There's always kryptonite, you can weaken him with that. Here's another problem. He's powered through kryptonite on multiple occasions. Sometimes he'll just wear his kryptonite-proof suit.
There have also been times where kryptonite has almost killed him, either through direct exposure or by weakening him. It really depends on who's writing him at the time. Also, are we really going to call a character developing counters to his weaknesses bad writing? Really? That's retarded.
But the thing is, there's also the fact that he's managed to be shot in the chest with a kryptonite bullet. A bullet that basically can stop him dead. Because it weakens him. He's now mortal. But the thing is, he's managed to survive long periods of time with the bullet still lodged in his heart. He still somehow managed to survive that. Also, take in mind, this is happening at night, so he basically can't get any power from the sun. He's stuck on the ground, the sun is gone, and he's got a kryptonite bullet in his heart, so he can't regenerate at all. And so basically, he's unkillable. The one thing that could be able to stop him, he just powers through it long enough to be able to get the bullet out.
Again, how badly kryptonite affects Clark depends on who's writing the story. More importantly, the thing that he's referencing, Justice League Doom, has Superman almost die because he's shot with the aforementioned kryptonite bullet. The Justice League has to do on-the-spot impromptu surgery in order to save his life. There's no mention of the bullet being in Clark's heart, but fuck it, we'll say it's either lodged in or next to his heart. That's less an issue with Superman and more of an issue with the general writing of the story. Also, at the time, from Superman getting shot in the chest to the bullet being taken out is implied to be pretty short. This is important because by the time they get to Clark, they have to act immediately or else he'll die.
You want me to perform surgery on him?
You're the only one who can.
Flash is at Star Labs Kyoto, waiting for them to finish making a kryptonite scalpel. Nothing else can cut his skin.
But we've run out of time. Your shape-shifting powers are his best hope.
So not only does he not power through it, he's very quickly dying. If it wasn't for Bruce acting quick because his contingencies were being used against the League, so he knew how to counter them, Clark would have died. That is made obvious if you watched the movie. At this point in the video, it's clear Man of a Single Thought only cares about Superman's powers. No engagement with who he is, nothing about how his stories are written, just the same old single-minded blue man too strong bullshit that pretends Superman's level of strength is an outlier when it's pretty consistent with a good number of characters that exist within DC. The next power of which is Clark's speed, where he references Goku vs. Superman 2 of all things.
One day, Superman was hanging out near Vega, the brightest star in the Lyra constellation.
For the record, that's 25 light years from Earth, or 147 trillion miles.
Naturally, a crisis occurred on Earth, so Superman's photographer buddy Jimmy activated his signal watch, calling for Superman's aid. And Superman arrived in a matter of minutes!
Now, I like Death Battle. They've massively improved their research over the years, and I don't think they've ever been as bad as people think they are. And the feat referenced isn't exactly wrong to my understanding. The issue comes in the fact that Death Battle is now a valid reference, at least for this video, and it is going to bite you in the ass. It's also funny that the worst video about Superman would reference one of the most hated death battles. Not even Ben Singer liked it. Goku vs. Superman 2 is an entire video by itself because I fucking hate that episode, but I digress and we move on.
Because he's that fast, you basically remove any sense of urgency. Like, there's never gonna be a ticking time bomb anymore because, well, Superman's just fast enough to be there within seconds.
Except the Justice League episode's Wildcards, where there is an on-screen ticking clock through most of the episodes. And Clark doesn't just auto-solve it because the Joker uses fake bombs and there's no way to tell them apart from the real bombs. Not helped by the Royal Flush Gang, hindering their efforts, which runs down the clock even more. Oh, and choose whatever ridiculous DC speed feat you want. Mine is when Wally West ran to the end of time and made the Black Flash crumble away into nothing. I'm gonna skip around for the final bits because we'd effectively be treading the same ground and I'd like to not be too repetitive. Link in the description to the original video if you want to see what I skipped.
So, basically, why he fails as a character is he just is not relatable. Superman's powers don't come from him training to become stronger. It mainly comes from the fact that he just has to believe he's strong enough to have these powers and he'll have it.
Clark may not have trained to get his strength and abilities, but he has trained to control them. Power without control is meaningless. You just end up needlessly destroying everything around you. He's not a shonen protagonist where a large point of the story is to get stronger. It's like saying Naruto sucks as a protagonist because he didn't get himself a harem. It fundamentally misses the point of the character. However, he has trained in more traditional ways. Remember when I said using Death Battle as a source would bite him in the ass?
He also studied 2 Kryptonian martial arts, Torquasm Rao and Torquasm Vo.
Orgasm what now?
Torquasm Rao is a hard martial art in which Superman enters the Theta state, a real-life phenomenon in which a person becomes extremely receptive to information and instinct. Torquasm Vo is a mental martial art with which Superman can fight off mind domination and illusions, or even counterattack. And thanks to some intense training from Mongol II, he managed to tear these barriers down and become the true Superman, capable of amazing feats.
Not only that, he's also trained in pressure point combat as well as other martial arts.
Other heroes like Batman, he had to train to become like that. Now, granted, he also has military-grade weaponry that no one can afford, but he also has his wits about him, so if you took all that military-grade stuff away from him, he'd still be pretty powerful to be able to beat. And that's not because he was born that way. No, he trained to become like that.
Batman's training, quite honestly, has nothing to do with his relatability. Saying so is incredibly reductive. What makes Bruce Wayne relatable is that he took an immense tragedy in his life and turned it into a force for good, to make sure no child would ever have to suffer a loss like he did, to make the city of Gotham a better place for everyone, and even opened up his home to those who suffered the same loss as him. That is what makes Batman relatable. The perseverance through trauma, using that trauma as motivation to not just better yourself, but to better others.
Other characters like Goku, for instance, didn't start off the strongest, definitely stronger than normal, but still not the strongest, could be beaten by normal people even. But he actually trained very hard to be able to get as powerful as he is.
Yes, the point of Goku as a character is to improve through hard work. That is not the point behind Superman. You cannot use Goku as a good comparison if their stories are vastly different. Sure, there are a lot of similarities between them in terms of backstory, and that Superman also inspires self-improvement by being a better person, but the comparison has always been stupid in terms of which character is better. They're both equally good in their own ways. A better comparison to Superman would be Spider-Man. They have far more in common in terms of what they represent and symbolize, and share the common theme of power and responsibility, but I digress.
A more recent character is Saitama from One Punch Man. He's very powerful, possibly more powerful than Superman. For all we know, we don't know too much about him. But the thing is, he's still relatable because he had to train to be able to get as strong as he is, to be able to defeat any enemy with just one single punch.
First off, no, Saitama was not stronger than Superman, at least when this video was made. Second, and most importantly, we once again are being hyper-reductive. What makes Saitama relatable is that, like all of us, he no longer finds meaning in something that he once loved. It's become too easy and too boring. The challenge no longer exists, and as such, any victory feels meaningless and hollow. It isn't just that he trained really hard to get this strong. Not every character is fucking Goku.
Whereas with Superman, he just is strong. There's no big relatability to him. He's someone who basically can always save the day.
Except all the times his dad has died of a heart attack, or the time he watched a girl die of cancer in front of him, or how when he played right into Lex Luthor's hands in JLU by fighting Captain Marvel and making himself look like an absolute fool. The event that kicked off Injustice is Superman failing to save the day. The Joker tricks him into killing his pregnant wife and blows up Metropolis. He also failed to save Lois in Kingdom Come as well.
Superman is just the hero that no one can ever hope to be or even try to aspire to be.
You can save the cat from the tree. You can help the old lady cross the street. You don't need superpowers to help people. Superman inspires hope of a better tomorrow, not just by saving us from danger, but by showing us that kindness and compassion are strengths, that we can make the world a better place, not by hitting supervillains, but by taking the time to lend a hand to someone in need. Because at his core, Clark Kent is a humble Kansas farm boy who was raised by good moral people in a small, close-knit community. Someone perfect for showing us that there is a better way, that there is hope for all of us, that we can, all of us, work together for that better tomorrow that Clark Kent strives to accomplish. And a big part of Clark's story is finding out who he is and what his purpose is. A lot of the big moments in his life are things that we can all experience. He's gotten married, started a family, experienced loss, because despite his powers, he is a man with a man's dreams, wants, and aspirations. How is that not relatable?
Batman, Spider-Man, Goku, Saitama, Green Arrow, Daredevil, those are heroes you can look up to, people you can relate to on a personal level because they have real issues that many of us, go through.
Dad! Dad!
They have real issues.
I'm not a freak. I'm not. I'm not!
They have real issues.
All those powers. And I couldn't even save him.
Real issues.
Your cells are oversaturated with power.
They are bursting from within. I'm dying.
Real issues.
What is this? Are you some kind of clown?
Applying your utterly retarded logic, Spider-Man isn't relatable because he never trained to get his powers. He basically lucked into them. This, of course, ignores literally everything of substance, just like what you've done with Superman. Something similar can also be said for Batman. He inherited his wealth, was born with a genius intellect, and even though he trained, the fact that he has mastered every martial art in the world, is an expert in multiple different scientific fields, and can expertly operate multiple types of vehicles. All by his mid to late 20s or 30s depending on the continuity, which implies some kind of inherent ability that makes it easier for him to learn new skills. This doesn't take away anything from Bruce because the reason and motivation behind learning those skills is more important than the act of learning them. Goku has a multitude of biological advantages that make getting stronger easier. Hell, he never actually trained to become a Super Saiyan or Super Saiyan God. This doesn't negate or lessen any of Goku's accomplishments, but by the hyper-reductive logic of this video, it would certainly lessen them, if not negate a few of them. I'm not knowledgeable enough on Green Arrow or Daredevil to comment, and I don't really need to say more about Saitama.
We do want to become stronger to be able to protect the ones we love or to be able to protect ourselves and whatnot. Whereas with Superman, he already is as strong. He's the person you never can be, no matter what you do.
And I've shown just how full of shit that statement is. And remember all those villains you mentioned earlier? We've shown 2 of them either killing Clark or managing to stop him in some way in Luthor and Doomsday. With Darkseid, he brainwashed Clark into thinking he was his own son and used him as a tool to try and conquer the universe. And Brainiac has been able to fend him off. Though I'm not too familiar with Brainiac outside of adapted media, and I usually match the research ability of the people I'm responding to, so here's a clip of Brainiac harming Superman showing that it is indeed possible. Going back to Lex Luthor, however, outside the thematic aspect of representing the worst aspects of humanity, Superman can't really do anything to Lex, at least initially, because a lot of Lex's dealings are under the table and away from the public eye, so gathering any concrete evidence is going to be difficult. And while Clark could just burst in and kill Lex or turn him in, that would go against Superman's principles. And because Lex has his hand in so many pots, there is a risk that putting him away might cost a lot of people their jobs and the city a good amount of its infrastructure. Granted, Lex usually cuts the bullshit and puts on the war suit, but at least initially it's an obstacle Clark can't punch his way through. And we are done. As you can see, Man of 1,000 Thoughts not only fails to remotely understand Superman, but never even tried. You can't find the faults with a character if you never bothered to understand them past superficial elements. We all know Superman is stupid strong. Can that hinder the story sometimes? Sure. But only focusing on that one aspect is reductive and quite frankly boring. It shows you have no intention of even trying to understand Superman as a character. Like I said before, Clark is not a shonen character. His overall story is inspiring others to be kind and compassionate towards each other. It's about a man finding his purpose and place in the world, about falling in love and starting a family. Is that a bit of an oversimplification? Sure, but I think it's a better understanding than this video gives, which doesn't go into the more substantive aspects of Clark Kent and presents his level of power as uncommon in DC when that's far from the case, as I've shown throughout the video. Now, as I said in the beginning, this video is old, and maybe he's addressed his mistakes in other videos, but he does have a video titled They Fixed Superman, and judging from the thumbnail, it's about my adventures with Superman, which I've only watched like 6 episodes of, so I can't really comment on it. But I guess he thinks it fixed him by nerfing him, which the DCAU did 20 years ago. I might give it a watch one day, but for now, I think that's enough. Big projects are in the works, one of which is a full critique of Dragon Age the Veilguard, which is taking a lot longer than expected because playing that game is a fucking chore. So stay tuned for that. Until next time.